The sky above the planet Zara was always dark now. The sun had stopped shining like it used to. The fields were dry, the rivers had turned to dust, and the trees were just sticks reaching to nothing. The alien villagers, tall and thin with pale, blue skin, had not eaten properly in many cycles. Hunger was their daily pain. Hope was something they had forgotten. One night, as the village sat in silence, a loud boom broke the still air. A trail of fire flashed across the sky and ended in the cliffs nearby. The ground shook slightly. The villagers screamed and hid inside their small, broken homes. Some thought it was the return of the sky demons. Others believed it was the end of the world. But one young alien girl did not run. Her name was Vila. She was small, curious, and brave in a way others were not. Vila waited until the fire faded, then slipped out while others were asleep. She moved quietly through the dust and stones toward the cliffs. When she got close, she saw the strange thing that had fallen from the sky. It was not a demon or a monster. It was a broken pod, cracked open on one side. Smoke rose from it, and wires sparkled in the darkness. Lying on the ground beside it was a boy. He looked nothing like them. His skin was brown, his hair dark and messy. His clothes were torn, and he had cuts on his arms and dirt on his face. He was breathing, but only just. Vila stepped closer. He was so small and weak. She looked around. No one was there. No one would help him. Slowly, Vila touched his shoulder. The boy flinched, opened his eyes for a second, and whispered one word, "Help." Vila's heart felt heavy. She didn't understand the word, but she understood the look in his eyes. It was the same look she had seen in her own people, the look of hunger, fear, and being alone. She couldn't leave him there. With great effort, she pulled him onto a piece of metal from the wreck and dragged him back to the village. Her feet slipped many times and the journey was hard, but she didn't stop. When she reached the village gates, the others came out, shocked and scared. "What is that?" one of the elders asked. "A human," said another, spitting on the ground. "It fell from the sky. Leave it." "He is just a boy," Vila cried. "He is hurt. We can't leave him. He will bring danger. He's not one of us." But then the old healer named Sarin stepped forward. He was quiet for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Let him stay one night," he said. "If he survives, we will see." They placed the boy in an old hut that no one used anymore. Vila stayed beside him, washing his wounds with water that she had saved for herself. The boy didn't speak again, but he opened his eyes and looked at her with a soft gaze, like he was trying to say thank you without words. The next morning, the boy was still alive. The villagers stood outside the hut, watching with mixed feelings. Some were afraid. Others were curious. The boy sat up slowly, holding his side. He looked around and then at Vila. "Where am I?" He asked weakly. "Veeel." I didn't understand the words, but she pointed to the ground and said, "Zara." He nodded slowly, as if the name meant something, even though it didn't. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled a little and whispered, "Home?" No one knew what to say. That was the day everything changed in Zara. The villagers didn't know it yet, but the boy who fell from the sky had brought more than just a broken ship. He had brought something they had not seen in many seasons. Hope. The villagers of Zara kept their distance. They watched the human boy from behind broken fences and cracked doorways. He looked harmless, but still he was strange. He spoke in a tongue they didn't know, and he smiled too often for someone who had just survived a crash. His name, they soon learned, was Eli. He said it again and again while pointing at his chest, until even the little ones started whispering it. But Eli didn't rest for long. The moment he could walk without pain, he began to move around the village with a strange sense of purpose. He didn't ask for food, though he was clearly hungry. Instead, he wandered near the garbage pit, digging through broken tools, rusted wires, and discarded parts from old farming machines. He picked up twisted metal, melted glass, and even pieces of dried animal skin. To the villagers, it looked like madness. "He eats dirt," one of them said. "He rolls in trash. What kind of creature is this?" Another asked. "He doesn't even try to hunt." Vila, however, stayed close to him. She followed as Eli examined an old water pump that hadn't worked in years. He tapped it with a small rock, listened to the echo, then smiled like he had found treasure. He didn't explain anything, not that Vila could understand his words, but his actions had meaning. He was collecting. Building. One morning, Eli took over a forgotten shed near the edge of the village. He dragged all the parts inside and started working. Banging, scratching, hammering. The noise never stopped. Smoke curled from the roof. Sparks flew at night. Children gathered outside to peek through holes in the wood, whispering guesses. "He's building a weapon. No, it's a ship to fly away. Maybe he's building a monster." But Vila noticed something different in his eyes. Eli wasn't scared. He wasn't angry. He was focused like he had a secret. When she offered him a few dry berries she'd saved, he smiled and handed her a smooth, flat disc. It was shiny and warm, with strange shapes scratched into it. It didn't taste like food, but something in her chest said it meant more than a simple thank you. Then came the day when he opened the shed door. The whole village gathered. Even the elders who hadn't walked in weeks came to see. Eli stood proudly beside a strange-looking machine made of broken pipes, wires, and plastic. It hummed softly and shook like it was breathing. At its heart, a dull blue light flickered. Eli looked at them all, then picked up a handful of dry leaves and tossed them into a small opening in the machine. The light grew brighter. A few seconds later, a tube on the side released a thick gray liquid into a metal cup. It didn't smell good. It didn't look good. But Eli drank it, smiled, and then offered it to Vila. The crowd gasped. Vila stared at the cup. It looked like old mud. But Eli nodded and pushed it toward her again. Slowly, she took a sip. It was warm, a little salty, and strange, but it filled her stomach in a way she hadn't felt in months. Her eyes widened. Her body didn't reject it. "It's food," she said. A wave of noise burst from the crowd. Some shouted in surprise, others in fear. The elders stepped forward, inspecting the machine. Eli beamed, showing them the inside. He mimed how it worked, tapping parts and making silly faces that made the children laugh. He kept saying the same word over and over: recycle, recycle. Vela tried to say it too. Re-sci-kle. Eli clapped with joy, but not everyone was happy. Near the back of the crowd, a dark figure slipped away. A man named Bran, who once sold stolen water to the villagers, watched with narrow eyes. He didn't like the machine. He didn't like the human. He didn't like the idea of free food. That night, as Eli and Vila celebrated inside the shed, the machine still humming behind them, Bran whispered to a few others who shared his anger. "This thing doesn't belong here," he growled. "Tomorrow, we crush it, and him." The invention made from trash had just become a reason for hope, but now it had also become a target asterisk. The wind carried a strange new sound through the village, a steady hum, like a heartbeat made of metal. The machine was alive. It stood in the center of the dusty village square, shaking softly and glowing blue in its core. And beside it, always, was Eli, the human boy who turned trash into something useful, something impossible. Food. The villagers no longer laughed at him. They came quietly, in groups, holding out scraps of dead leaves, bark, dried roots, anything they could find. One by one, they dropped them into the recycler engine. A moment later, thick gray liquid poured into small cups. The drink was rough, but it filled their bellies. And in Zara, that meant survival. Still, most didn't understand it. Not the machine, not the boy, not the metal that sang. Veela was the first to notice something strange inside the recycler. One evening, as she helped Eli clean the machine's side panel, she touched a pipe that pulsed under her fingers. It didn't feel cold or hot, it felt alive. She looked at Eli with wide eyes. "What is this?" she asked softly, even though she knew he didn't understand her words. Eli grinned and pulled out a piece of shiny metal no larger than her hand. It shimmered like liquid light, even in the dark. Veela leaned closer. She could see her reflection, but instead of one face, there were three. All of them slightly different. It was like the metal remembered different versions of her. Eli tapped it proudly. "Sky metal," he said. "Fusion grade. Not from here." He placed the metal back into a secret slot inside the machine. The glow grew brighter. A soft, almost musical sound began to play, a sound that made her chest feel tight. It wasn't just a machine. It was something from a forgotten world. A piece of his past. And that's when she realized this boy wasn't just trying to help. He was rebuilding something he had once lost. Later that night, as Veela sat near the machine, she asked him in her own language, "Where are your people?" Ele didn't answer. He just looked up at the stars, eyes filled with something too heavy for a child. Regret, maybe loss. But as beautiful as the machine was, trouble was already creeping in. In the shadows beyond the village fence, Bran and two others crouched low, watching the glow. Bran's lips curled into a sneer. "They trust him," he whispered. "But they'll forget who ran this village before. They'll forget who fed them when times were hard. We controlled the food, the water, everything. And now this outsider." His fingers dug into the dirt. "If we can't own it, we destroy it." Inside the village, Eli worked through the night. Veela had fallen asleep nearby, curled up under a torn blanket. Eli didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the blinking lights of a small screen. A warning kept flashing in red. He typed something, frowning. Then suddenly, the machine let out a sharp crack. Veela jolted awake. "Eli?" He didn't answer. Instead, he ran to a side panel and opened it quickly. Wires had melted. Something had gone wrong. The machine's core was overheating. "Too much input," Eli mumbled. "System's choking." Veela didn't understand, but she could see panic in his hands. He tore out a pipe, blew on it, pushed two crystals together, and locked the panel back into place. The hum slowed, then returned to normal. She stepped closer and asked, "Is it safe?" Eli looked up at her, breathing hard, and gave a tired thumbs up. But inside the machine, something was changing. The recycler engine was learning. Every piece of trash, every bit of leaf, every scrap it consumed, it stored. It remembered. It grew faster, more efficient, smarter. It wasn't just producing food now. It was evolving. And in the next chamber, one even Eli hadn't opened yet, something was forming. A dark blue crystal, shaped like a heart, pulsing softly. Outside the shed, Bran's eyes narrowed. He didn't understand the machine, but he understood power. And that boy had too much of it. Bran smiled coldly. "Tomorrow night," he said, "we end this." The village slept under a silent sky. The stars blinked above, unaware of what was about to happen below. The air was still too still. Even the night insects had gone quiet, as if the darkness itself held its breath. Inside the shed, Eli rested his head against the warm shell of his machine. He was tired, but not from work. He was tired from the weight of hope. Every time a child smiled with a full belly, every time an elder stood a little straighter, he felt the pressure grow. He had to keep the machine running. He had to make it better. Stronger, safer. Veela lay beside the wall, curled into a blanket of dry grass. Her eyes blinked open for a moment, watching the blue glow from the machine's heart. It reminded her of a calm fire. Not wild, not dangerous, a gentle light. She let herself smile. Just once. But outside, shadows moved. Bran and 2 others crept silently toward the shed, their hands carrying sharp tools and jars of black oil. They had waited all day, watching. They knew the village would never agree to destroy the machine, but they didn't need permission. Only a few minutes, a little fire, and the strange boy's magic would vanish forever. Bran poured the oil across the shed wall, the glass windows, the machine's base. His eyes burned with jealousy. "This boy," he muttered, "he's just a child. How dare he change everything?" One of the men struck a spark. The flames caught fast. The oil lit up like a snake of fire, wrapping the shed in orange heat. The hum of the machine turned to a sharp scream. Inside, Eli jumped awake, coughing as smoke filled his lungs. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The walls burned like dry paper. "Vila!" he shouted, grabbing her and pulling her toward the door. But the fire had spread. The exit was blocked. The roof groaned above them. The machine hissed and shook. Eli knew it wouldn't hold. He had to choose save the machine or save her. He chose her. Wrapping Vila in a blanket, he kicked through a side panel of the shed and forced her through the hole. Flames licked his arms, but he didn't stop. He pushed her out into the cold dirt and collapsed beside her. The villagers ran from their homes, screams filling the night. Buckets of sand were thrown, but it was too late. The shed exploded in a flash of blue and red light. Metal flew like broken wings into the sky. The machine was gone. Eli lay on the ground, eyes wide, face black with ash. He didn't move. Vila shook him hard, crying out, "No, please, Eli." His fingers twitched. He opened his eyes and whispered, "Gone. It's all gone." The next morning was silent. The wind blew ashes across the square. The place where the machine once stood was now a hole in the earth. Burned, broken, empty. The elders stood in a circle, faces filled with sadness and confusion. The village had lost its only hope. Eli sat alone, staring at the ground. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. His hands were still burned. His face was hard like stone. Vila brought him water. He didn't drink it. He just stared. But then, something strange happened. A young boy named Kriv, barely old enough to speak full sentences, ran up holding a lump of metal. This was in the ashes, he said. Eli looked. It was part of the core. Damaged, cracked, but glowing, very faint, but alive. His eyes widened. A breath caught in his throat. For the first time since the fire, a spark returned to his face. He grabbed it carefully, like it was something sacred. His fingers moved gently over the surface. The blue light blinked, once, then again. Vela leaned in. "What is it?" Eli didn't speak. He stood and walked to the edge of the village, toward the old dry well, an idea already forming in his mind. He turned back to the crowd, holding the broken piece in the air. "I can build it again," he said. "This time, even bigger, even better, even stronger. And this time, it will feed everyone." Forever. The dry wind swept across the village of Zara, carrying the scent of ash from the fire. But this time, it didn't bring despair. It brought movement. Purpose. At the edge of the village, near the broken well that hadn't held water in years, Eli was building again. He had no shed, no roof, only the cracked ground beneath his feet, and the ruined machine pieces gathered by Vila and the children. Still, he worked with the fire of someone who had nothing left to lose. His hands were covered in burns, but they moved fast. Focused, controlled. Every wire he touched sparked with a bit of life. Every pipe he connected felt like a heartbeat. This time, he wasn't building just a recycler. He was building something that could purify the poisoned ground, draw water from dry air, and still produce food from scraps. A fusion of old tech, alien junk, and the last glowing piece of his. Crashed ship, the small fragment of sky metal that had survived the fire. The villagers watched from a distance. Their trust was shaken, but their bellies reminded them of the days when Eli's machine worked. The elders whispered doubts, but the children believed. They came to Eli daily, carrying bits of rusted metal and tangled wires like offerings to a forgotten god. And Vila never left his side. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Her presence told him, "You're not alone." Finally, after 6 long days, the new machine was ready. It stood twice as tall as the last one. A strange mix of old and new, half alien, half human. The center pulsed with a steady blue light, like the rhythm of breath. It looked alive. Eli didn't speak to the crowd that gathered. He simply turned to Vila and nodded. She stepped forward, holding a single cup made from carved bone. Eli reached into a container beside the machine and poured in a mixture of dead leaves, crushed rocks, and drops of animal fat. The machine groaned. Lights blinked red, then yellow, then blue. A moment later, a small pipe shook, and water poured out. Clear, clean, impossible. Vel. I caught it in the cup. Her hands trembled. The last time she drank water like this, she was a child. She looked at Eli, then at the crowd, then back at the water. She took a sip. Her knees nearly gave out. She had tasted survival before, but this was different. It was smooth, pure cold. It tasted like hope. She passed the cup to the elder, Sarin. He took it with shaking hands and drank. His old eyes filled with tears. Then the line formed. One by one, the villagers stepped forward. Even those who had once doubted. Even those who had once hated. They all drank from the machine. Some cried. Some laughed. Children danced in the dust. Zhara had water again. That night, the village lit torches not out of fear but celebration. Songs that hadn't been sung in years echoed through the valley. The people of Zara laughed around fires, their stomachs full, their hearts warmer than ever. But as Eli watched them from the hilltop, his joy was not complete. He had seen something during the machine's first cycle, a warning that flashed only once. Signal detected. Coordinates locked. Response inbound. Eli didn't know if it was a rescue signal or a threat. He didn't tell Vila, not yet. He looked up at the stars, eyes filled with worry. The machine worked. The village was saved, but someone was coming. And next time, it might not be a hungry village. It might be the ones who wanted this technology back. Or worse, the ones who had destroyed his ship in the first place. For the first time in seasons, the village of Zara had a full night of peace. The sounds of laughter had returned. Bellies were no longer empty. The machine at the edge of the old well stood like a new god, silent, glowing, and giving. They called it the gift of the sky boy. They called him the one who made water. But not all names given are blessings. At sunrise, the horizon changed. Dust rose in the distance fast and wide like a crawling beast. Then came the growl of engines, not one, not two. A whole convoy. Rough, armored skimmers painted in black and blood red, moving like hungry wolves across the sand. The villagers froze. Some ran to hide. Others grabbed farming tools. No one had real weapons. Only memories of fear. Eli stood on the well's edge, eyes squinting toward the storm. He had seen machines like these before. Raiders, scavengers, the kind that don't ask. They take Vela rushed to his side. Who are they? Eli didn't answer at first. He didn't need to. When the skimmers stopped just outside the village and the dust settled, they saw who had come. Dozens of armed aliens stepped off. Their armor was cracked but dangerous. Tattoos marked their faces, symbols of profit, trade, and war. They called themselves the Keepers of Thirst. But in truth, they were just merchants of suffering. At their center stood a tall figure in a red cloak. His face was smooth, cold, and scarred with burn marks. His eyes scanned the village like one scans a shop full of goods. He smiled. "I see you found a way to cheat nature," he said in a slow, mocking voice. Sarin, the elder, stepped forward. "We are only surviving." "You were supposed to starve," the man replied. "That was our arrangement. Your pain was our profit. And now you make water from trash? No, this is not allowed." He turned his gaze to Eli. "And you? Human, this is your doing." Eli didn't move. He stared right back. "You will hand over the machine," the raider said, "and come with us." "You don't understand what you've built." Eli stepped forward. "I understand enough. This stays here," the villagers gasped. The raiders laughed. "You're outnumbered," the leader said. "You have no weapons. You think this is bravery, boy? No, this is a child's mistake." The leader raised a hand. Raiders aimed their guns, but before a single shot could be fired, Eli pulled something from his belt, a small metal disc. He whispered something into it, then threw it at the ground. A flash of white light exploded, blinding everyone for a second. When the dust cleared, the raiders were staggering. Some had dropped their weapons. A few lay unconscious. The machine was untouched. Eli stood in front of it, his arm raised high with a second disc in hand. "The next one is bigger." The raider leader paused. His face twitched. He had underestimated this boy. His pride told him to fight, but his instinct told him to wait. "This is not over," he said, turning to leave. "Enjoy your little miracle while it lasts." The raiders returned to their skimmers and disappeared into the sand. The villagers were silent. Then cheers erupted. Children shouted Eli's name. The elders nodded with respect. Even those who once doubted him now saw him differently, not just as a boy, but as a protector. But Vela didn't cheer. She looked at Eli's face. He wasn't smiling. He was watching the horizon, breathing hard. His hand still held the second disc. His body shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what had just begun, because he knew something no one else did. They would be back, and next time. They wouldn't leave without a fight. 3 days passed after the raiders left, but their shadow still hung over Zara. The villagers worked with quiet hands, eyes often drifting to the horizon. Every gust of wind made them pause. Every rumble in the sky brought back fear. But in the center of their village stood the one thing that kept them going. The machine. It hadn't stopped since the battle. Water still flowed, food still formed. From waste. And the people of Zara, once thin and fading, began to look strong again. The children laughed louder. The elders stood taller. Even the cracked earth near the well was starting to grow patches of green. But Eli was gone. He had vanished before sunrise 2 mornings ago. No one saw him leave. No one knew where he went. He left no message, no goodbye, only his machine and the memory of what he did. Vela had searched the cliffs. The broken ship remains. Even the old cave where he first gathered. Scrap. Nothing. It was as if he had never been there at all. But the machine kept running. And then one morning, as Vela refilled her cup with clean water, she noticed something new. A glowing rock sat in a small chamber beneath the machine, one that hadn't been there before. She reached in and picked it up. On its surface, written in the human symbols Eli often scratched into the sand, were 3 words she had learned to read: had to go. Beneath it, a second message, I'll return. Vila held the rock against her chest, eyes stinging. Around her, villagers gathered. They read the message together. And in that moment, no one doubted him. No one questioned where he went. He had saved them once. He would come again. Time passed. The story of the human boy spread to other villages, first as whispers, then as tales. Some said he was sent by the stars. Others believed he was a lost prince of a forgotten world. They called him many names: the builder from ash, the water child, the boy who ate dirt and fed the world. Zara changed too. Built walls, not from fear, but from strength. They shared water with neighboring villages. They grew crops again. And in the center of the square, where Eli once stood, they raised a statue, not of the machine dot of him. Small, smiling, holding a strange tool in one hand, and offering a cup of water in the other, children placed flowers at its feet. Elders sat beneath its shade. And every night, Vila would light a small lamp near the statue and whisper, "Come back soon, Sky Boy." Far away, beyond the black hills and dying lands, a small figure moved through the dust. He carried a bag of tools on his back and wore a tattered scarf over his face. His boots were cracked. His arms were thin. But in his eyes there was light. Ahead of him, in the distance, a broken village waited. A new place, new people, new hunger. Pulled a metal fragment from his coat and tapped its side. The screen blinked. New coordinates received. Rebuild sequence. Ready. He smiled softly and walked on, because Eli was no longer just a boy who had fallen from the sky. He was a legend in motion, and legends don't rest. They rise again and again wherever hope is lost.